Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Edwards, and you're not. Today, I hope to chat briefly about the topic of the assessment interview. I have identified 4 articles that will help guide us through the principles of the assessment interview. Today in class, we only have one student, and that student will be identified momentarily. The student and I will engage in a question and answer period so as to highlight for you those portions of my lecture that are most important. So sit back and go for the ride.
Hey man, I got a question. I got a question for you. I got a question. I got so many questions.
Young man, put your hand down. I haven't even begun teaching yet. Let me at least teach 5 minutes. We discuss the case of a female who comes to neurology with a range of complaints that don't quite fit together as a collective. In fact, she puzzles her neurologist so much that the neurologist engages a range of referrals to include psych, neuropsych, and behavioral medicine. Representing behavioral medicine, we engaged a pretty extensive diagnostic interview and testing and discovered that the accent that the patient presented with was unrelated to her history and her background. In fact, she had a very thick accent that we describe in the paper, but that accent was unrelated to her background at all. She was from the United States. She had no history or training in another country. There was no obvious reason for her presentation. And so at rounds, we all began discussing how her unique presentation came together. No one had identified that she was not from or had not spent time in another country. And so we began piecing together that which was the ultimate diagnosis that we applied to her, which was foreign accent syndrome. Foreign accent syndrome is a syndrome that produces a foreign accent in a person who does not have a cultural, physical, or other connection to a country. I hope that you engage this particular paper with some detail because we go through and delineate each step of the diagnostic assessment, including the interview, and what we got from that interview, the clues that occurred in that interview that allowed us to ultimately apply the diagnosis of foreign accent syndrome. This particular paper was actually published in a journal called Behavioral Neurology back in 2011.
Hey man, I think my sister might have some of that foreign, the foreign stuff, the accent stuff with the speech. Yeah, one time she was cooking and she fell down, and when she hit the floor, it sounded like she was speaking some French. Yeah, she yeah, that I think it's the same thing. I think he talking about the same thing right there.
Where are your parents?